Good evening, everybody, from the Mandalay Bay hotel room I'm staying in. I'm in lovely Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days, but that's not going to stop us from tonight's episode of All the Right Movies. And this is one, I guess, more for you older guys, but I'm telling you, if you are, under the age of 40 and you've never seen tonight's movie, North Dallas 40, I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I can tell you, you will laugh your asses off. Little on the old side, but I know what's funny, and this is funny, and it's kind of the way where my late father would recommend like old movies for me to watch, and when I was young, old movies were black and white, and so I just didn't want to watch the black and white movies, and then some of the ones that came out, when I'm like 5 or 6 or younger and didn't know, and I always got recommended the right ones, and two of them were like one was a Paul Newman and Robert Redford, the other was just Robert Redford. One was Jeremiah Johnson, the other was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Those still work for me today. Trust me, this one works today. You're going to watch the football games in it, and you're going to realize they're probably playing on a field that Burke or Central or Benson's got a really nice field, but that a lot of high schoolers would be embarrassed to play on. They were not busting the bank on location shoots here. Well, let's put it this way: it's pretty much the Dallas Cowboys, but not the Dallas Cowboys. Don't piss off the NFL. But that's the way it was. They're the uniforms they're wearing, everything that's exactly the Cowboys. It's just a logoless Cowboys helmet. There's no blue star on the helmet, and they're shooting it in LA, and probably just rented a high school or a junior college or something like that. So they're shooting down on the field. You're getting zero shots of fans in the stands. Probably the most famous, like one you wish they'd go back and just have Stallone fix it, is Rocky, where they alternated from shots of live events at the Philadelphia Spectrum that were obviously different live events, just people in the Spectrum, and it's a lot grainier and all this because they probably got it from some local news station, and either that or it is a few people sitting around with pretty obvious cardboard cutouts. If you stop and freeze and look at some of these shots, there's pictures of like Gazzo, Rocky's former mob guy that he did the collecting for, sitting in the stands, and there's like two, and the shot's tight enough where they just have to put like 5 people around him. They don't even screw with fans here. They might pipe some noise in, but there's not one shot up into the seats. So anyway, that's your warning, but I'm telling you, hopefully, even though I'm going to blow some of it for you, if you didn't watch it, watch it. You'll enjoy it because it's not just funny. It brought home. NFL wanted nothing to do with it. Let's get that out of the way right now. The NFL wanted nothing to do with this movie, and as I'll tell you later, guys who helped this movie found themselves not in the NFL. That they, of course, they didn't blacklist anyone, but I think even Pete Rozelle, who was the commissioner then, it came out in 1979, so now we're off and running. But even Pete Rozelle said, well, of course there was no order to, fire guys or blacklist guys, but maybe some of them watched the movie and just didn't want them around. Okay, Pete. So anyway, North Dallas 40 comes out August 3rd, 1979. Not a lot of movies. This is still when not a lot of movies are coming out each year. I try to explain that one of the reasons I think I love movies so much is there just weren't that many when you were a kid. You went to see it in the theater. There were maybe 20 something movies a year. And if you didn't catch it in the theater, your best chance was that it was a hit. So about a year later, it would be the Sunday night movie of the week, on Letterbox for TV, cut short to fit in the commercials over the 3 hour broadcast, which would be 40 minutes of commercials. So if it was a longer one, then you're just missing part of it, and then you have the pan and scan going. So that's what you had to deal with if you didn't catch it in the theater. So this one comes out August 3rd, 1979. This is starting to be a good time for movies to come out. Jaws was probably our first summer blockbuster, and it was an accident because nobody released movies in the summer, as I've said before, because they didn't think anyone would go. Everyone's at the beach. And it's like, yeah, even if everyone's at the beach, and trust me, we did this, is there was at least one night when we were at the beach where it's like, damn, it's hot out. Let's go see a movie. And I think that's how I ended up seeing like Mr. Mom of all things. So anyway, it gets a decent release. It actually finishes 27th in the country and makes $26 million. So not too bad for a football movie, and maybe that's just how starved people were for sports movies. The budget was estimated at 18 million, and you have a pretty good cast here. So I think they pumped some money into the script. This was based on Peter Gent, who was a wide receiver for the Cowboys in the '60s. It was based on a novel he wrote called North Dallas 40, and which kind of unloaded everything from the locker room. And I think he's still got angry teammates about that too, by the way. When we get into the trivia, you'll hear some like basically calling him a pussy. Here, the top 5 movies that year. Here's where you've got Star Wars. The Rockies are coming now, or the first have come out and not the sequels. You've had Rocky come out, you've had Star Wars come out, you've had Jaws come out. But this summer we're pretty much back to just not well. I take it back. Number 4, number one movie in the country was Kramer versus Kramer. We're going to hit that again before we're done. Number 2, Amityville Horror. I don't know if a horror movie can even really buy their way into the top 5 or 10 anymore, unless it's got an artistic feel. Maybe Sinners was in the top 5 release. I don't know if it'll make it for the year. Rocky 2 was number 3, so there's your Rocky sequel. And then Star Trek: The Motion Picture was number 4, and I think that would have been a lot higher if it wasn't a really boring movie. But everybody, it had decent special effects for the time, had the old Star Trek cast. The show had been off and just doing reruns for who knows how many years. Like, are we about 10 years by then? Did it end in like 70, 71? If somebody knows, jump in on the comments and tell me there. But there are your top 4 flicks. And hey, we have we have a new entrant for plugging in first into the comments after I posted the show, which I did probably about midday yesterday. It was like when I was between flights for Vegas, and just wanted to get that out there so I didn't forget to do it later that night when I knew I'd just be going face down instead of doing all the early prep work I wanted to do. Yeah, instead I spent all day down in the main, I don't know what they call it, a ballroom, the South Seas ballroom. Guys, it's no smaller at all than Lucas Field, the football field in Indianapolis, where the last 2 Big Ten media days where it is. We could raise the ceiling a little and play a game in there. But anyway, Nick Nolte's making his second appearance as the star of a movie on All the Right Movies. We previously did Blue Chips last year, so I think Nick Nolte taking the early lead as All the Right Movies' favorite sports actor. Let's talk again about. I'd like to find the Mount Rushmores for our directors or actors or whoever, and let's do a Nick Nolte double Mount Rushmore. Let's do sports movie Nick Nolte, which he just does qualify for, and then we'll do non-sports movie Nick Nolte. If you've got if you've got a different Nick Nolte Mount Rushmore, pop it in the comments. And lost my train of thought. It's been a busy day. So my Nick Nolte sports movie Mount Rushmore, I believe it's the only 4 I could really find, but three are very, very solid, and 1 makes it in there on the arguably, and it's also based on a book, a really interesting book, depending on who you are. But North Dallas 40, obviously, Blue Chips, which I just said, and then Warrior, which is absolutely going to be on here someday. It is in my top 5 sports movies of all time. If you haven't seen Warrior, it didn't really do much in the theaters. And my big belief for that was, 1, they barely marketed it, and 2, when they did market it, they kind of told you almost what the ending was. They gave away a big part of the ending. But then it hit cable, DVD, all that, and then it kind of took off after that where it's called the UFC, or the MMA Rocky, and it's fantastic, amazing cast, and Nick Nolte got nominated for an Academy Award and absolutely got robbed by not winning, and I won't even argue that. So, and along with our new guy here, Wade Farr getting in first, and Justin Rogge's giving us a Go Big Red. If you're here watching and just want to type in a Go Big Red for us, go ahead. Any thoughts? Jump in anytime, and we'll get around to the comments. So anyway, non-sports Mount Rushmore for Nick Nolte. I go with, and there's a lot more options here. I go with 48 Hours. I go with a movie that I saw in the theater, and it's just fantastic. It's called Extreme Prejudice, where he's playing a modern day Texas Ranger at war with I believe it's a Mexican drug runner. And was it Powers Booze? I can't remember, but I really want to start finding it again, because I started going through Nolte's IMDb, and which is a pretty amazing experience on its own. And then The Prince of Tides, Streisand didn't quite do it. It's not bad in it, but I felt like, let's make this much more of a Barbara Streisand vehicle than the character was in the book. It didn't make it was a major character in the book, but I feel like it got bumped up and got a lot more screen attention because Babs was playing that character. But Nolte's unbelievable in that. And then another one that went in under the radar, saw this in the theater. It just, fantastic performance, because it creeped me out. He plays a dirty cop in a movie called Q&A, just the letter Q, the ampersand, and A. It pops onto Hulu every now and then. I've seen it there. I will tell you what, there's just amazing performances to me, it's just a crime he didn't get nominated for an Oscar for that. I think it might be his best performance, because there is nothing redeemable about this character, but you can see he's one of those bad guys that has the charisma. But when he is bad, a bad person, he is just creepy and awful, and just has no, and it's more than just no empathy. He's almost like a genius sociopath. Timothy Hutton stars in it with him. Armand Asante plays a drug dealer in there, and he's another one who is just off the charts fantastic. Just the swagger with his character, but his character has a humanity that Nolte's doesn't in there. And it's something else. So I'd highly recommend Q&A for anybody if they want to watch it. Might be able to find it on Tubi. The TUBI. I still tell everybody who's going to watch this, there's at least 1/5 of my top 50 that are sports movies that are showing on Tubi, which is where everything is that you're going, why doesn't anybody stream this? All free. You don't have to give, you can make up a name. You don't need a credit card or anything. It's just all free, and it does run on the ads, but for what they carry, it's worth it. Roger Ebert, I had to dig to find this, and I could only find a quote, because Roger Ebert's review of North Dallas 40 has disappeared. It's not on his website where all of his reviews are. I have a feeling I've got about 3 or 4 different Roger Ebert movie review books at home, and I'm sure it's in one of them, because I remember reading it, but it's not there. I can't find it on the internet, but I did find a place that showed that our boy Roger gave it 3.5 stars. Well deserved. The quote that I found was perfect. He goes, "The football scenes are brutally real. The locker room scenes are totally authentic." And he's 100% correct on this. Now, by the way, it looks like I'm looking off to the side. Again, I've hit the road without my camera and mic, so hopefully the sound's fine. And I'll try to remember to look where the camera is on the iPad. But to stare at the screen, normally my camera's just right there. So when I'm looking at the screen, I'm looking at myself. But now I'm like looking shifty here, shifty-eyed. So there's your explanation. And yeah, not the first time. Rotten Tomatoes, critics loved it, 86%. And the audience, it dove a little lower. And I have a feeling you've got some audience that went to it that maybe a spouse who doesn't, a spouse or a friend who really didn't like sports got drugged there, didn't find a lot of the the abhorrent locker room stories and behavior amusing, and then just some of the violence in the games was probably a little too much. And we got another. This works because I was going to mention this. We got Tiger Shark Diver with a Go Big Red. We got or Justin Rogie with Go Big Red, who I already got. I got Tiger Shark Diver with a Go Big Red, and fun fact, and I was going to say, Omaha's own Nick Nolte. If you want to see a picture of Nick Nolte, just go to because he finished at Westside, but he started at Benson. And at the 72nd Military Pepper Jacks, they've got old Omaha photos, and they replaced some of them, but I believe Nick Nolte, they have the Benson basketball team's picture. Nolte is in there. And I'm thinking I know exactly what kind of student he was, because it's the kind of thing I would have found hilarious in high school. Hey, coach, anybody? I saw 69 hanging there. Anybody got 69? Nope, said the unsuspecting coach. So, yeah, there's Nick Nolte sporting his 69 proudly. Omaha's own. Good for you, buddy. Let's see. Now, I'm going to throw in even a second sports, or actually just a second Mount Rushmore. I don't know how many of you are familiar with G.D. Spradlin. He was just your classic movie asshole. I don't know if it's exactly bad guy, but just a fantastic asshole. And he started off, he got noticed for Godfather Part 2. He plays Senator Neary, is that's the last name? But he's the guy that comes in, talks all kinds of shit to Michael, and how he doesn't like I don't like you grease balls coming into my county, and you with your oily hair and all, just every racial epithet for the Italians he can think of. He's just letting fly at Michael Corleone, and tells them he wants 50 grand in cash for himself to make sure they get their casino license. And Michael informs them, I'm going to pay you zero. And he's just like scoffing at him. And they basically made him think he murdered a hooker, and they covered up for him, and boom. So yeah, the Godfather Part 2, jerk asshole G.D. Spradlin kind of gets what's coming to him. Then he played a general in Apocalypse Now, and he is the one at the very beginning when they go grab Martin Sheen out of whatever bender he's on in his hotel, fighting like mirrors and like cutting up his hand, and then they drag him naked into the shower. Well, right after that, they have the lunch, and Harrison Ford, I believe, is a major in this lunch. So quite the lunch with Martin Sheen, Harrison Ford, and G.D. Spradlin. G.D. Spradlin pops off the line as they're passing around a lot of the local Vietnamese dishes, and one of them is just these giant prawns that just look like they have, quills coming out of them or whatever. And he tells Martin Sheen, if you eat these, you'll never have to prove your bravery again to me, or something like that. So he's not in there long, but he's the one leading the meeting about when they're going to tell Martin Sheen to go after Marlon Brando. So that's his second shot, and then that's his third shot, his second movie, and it's one I can't remember, but I think we might see it this year or this season on All the Right Movies, is the basketball movie One on One with Robbie Benson, who plays a country boy and this is like a little ahead of its time, because this is the first sports movie, I believe, that shows you just how NIL worked in the old days, shall we say, because there's Robbie Benson getting a car, it's cash, and he's got the alumni giving him $500 for a pair of tickets to each game in 1977. I saw that when I first moved to Omaha. And G.D. Spradlin plays the coach who really gets a little out of hand in that movie, because when he figures out, hey, this skinny little twerp's not really any good at basketball, he just starts finding out ways to run him off. And I think in that day, you could still kick him out after he could still bounce him after a year. That it was a 4-year scholarship, but it was like a 4-year repeating annually type of scholarship. The answer to the question, how did Les Miles and Nick Saban manage to sign 28 to 35 guys every season when the roster limit was 85 scholarships? They were running them off. Well, I guess like he was trying to kick him out of there before the semester was over, even though he's not getting a new player until the next season. So I didn't understand the urgency, but yeah, he was in that, and then North Dallas 40. So GD Spradlin, for those of you that remember, I think I might have gotten a picture through of GD. Hold on, I was trying to get pictures loaded at the end, and there you go. There's GD smirking at Michael Corleone in the Godfather Part 2. Yeah, yeah. GD was never really a good guy. I remember in one movie there was this awful movie Tank with James Garner and C. Thomas Howell, where GD Spradlin's like a jerk sheriff, and so he arrests C. Thomas Howell on some trumped up charges. They're giving him the old Southern jail beatings, and then James Garner, former major, steals a tank off his army base and proceeds to terrorize what I'm assuming is Georgia in this movie. But yeah, you weren't ever going to find GD Spradlin doing anything good. So number 2, is this plot deserve the ludicrous? I'm telling you what, this, first of all, it was fiction, based on fact. It was the football version of Bowl 4 by Jim Bouton or Jim Bouton, however, I still don't know how to pronounce his name. But it was the tell-all book of the NFL. So, it made Gent some enemies among players and coaches. If you haven't seen the movie, let's see, the star Nick Nolte plays Phil Elliott. Phil Elliott is Peter Gent. Mac Davis is Don Meredith. For those of you that remember Dandy Don, either as a Cowboys quarterback or a broadcast, one of the first Monday Night Football broadcasters with Gifford and Cosell. Fun fact. Here's our only real casting info. Apparently, that's there's not a lot of info. The agents in the 70s weren't getting down to where they tried to put a rumor everywhere, so you could go on IMDb and see all the movies they were supposedly wanted to do, but had other obligations, things like that. But anyway, Charles Durning plays an assistant coach. He plays the unhinged coach. Bo Svensson and John Matuzak play an offensive and defensive lineman. That's the John Matuzak that played for the Raiders, absolute psychopath, and delivers one of the best monologues in movie history. And then you had Steve Forrest playing the owner of the team. What were their names? Let's see. I got that written down here. Give me just a moment. Younger, because he plays the owner who's oh god, what were their? We'll find it. But who represented Clint Murchison, who owned the Cowboys at the time, and then Dabney Coleman played the other assistant, and our boy GD Spradlin. You're going to have no problem figuring out that he's Tom Landry at all. Now, there was a backup quarterback in the movie Hartman. No idea who the actor is, and Hartman. Everybody thought Hartman is Roger Staubach, but it wasn't. Even Pete Gent said when he wrote it, he wasn't. I don't think Staubach was quite there yet in the 60s, or if he was, he wasn't the one who replaced Meredith when Meredith got pissed and quit. He got tired of Landry and quit after Landry pulled him during a playoff game. But it wasn't Staubach he put in it. He says, but don't tell Roger Staubach that. It would probably break his heart. He probably thought he was well portrayed, despite a story I'm going to tell you. So you will see a lot of these guys are the absolute. They're not even trying to really hide which Cowboys they're playing. And Mac Davis completely based on Don Meredith. Gent made no secret of that. So there's not ludicrous for this. I'm going to give this plot an Osborne because it's fantastic. The movie itself, it's just a week in the life. It starts with Phil waking up in utter pain on Monday morning, which will take us right into our scenes. Yeah, he's waking up in horrible pain on Monday morning, and then what is it? I was on a thing. Yeah, he wakes up on Monday morning, and then you're at film and practice Tuesday through Friday, and then you've got the game, and then you've got the next game on Sunday, I think, which is the playoff implications game or maybe it keeps them out of the playoffs. And what a horrifying way for it to end if that's the case. Yeah, and it never really occurred to me for a while when I watched the movie. I'm not watching anything based on the season or a part of the season of the playoffs. This is just a week in the life of the NFL. So let's see. The comments aren't coming in. Oh, wait, we got a few. I take that back. Yeah, Tiger Shark talking about Nolte says, I had no idea he graduated from Westside. I guess he started at Benson, finished at Westside. And we've got Big Dog Wiltrick Comps with a Go Big Red. So good to have you here, Big Dog. So let's get to the scenes. And yeah, we start off. They got you laughing right away. I kid you not. We start off, and Nolte is just trying to get to the tub for a hot soak on a Monday morning after what looked like a night. They did night games for both because it would have been even harder to hide the fact that there's no crowd if they did day games. So I don't think they had Sunday night football yet, but they were playing Sunday night football. And Nolte is just creaking, and he's messing with his knee and his leg. They did a great job of showing like surgery looking knees and just a body beat to shit. But when he's running around out there, he's pretty spry. So he captures like how these guys have to get from barely able to move to functioning gradually to functioning again the next Sunday. And the older you are, the harder it is. And so there he is, just wants to sit in that tub and relax. And the moment he does, here comes Mac Davis and Matuzak and Bo Svenson. And Bo Svenson is Joe Bob Pretty, I think. I can't remember what Matuzak's character was, but he was just terrifying as well. And his bathroom, I don't know who designed a bathroom to be right by a double door pane glass double door that just opens right into your bathroom from the outside. But they just kick that thing to pieces and blast their shotguns off into the sky and start screaming at him. And he doesn't want to go, and they're calling him a pussy. And so Seth is driving this Cadillac through a ranch while these two guys sit on the hood and just blast shotguns at everything. Where is the hunt? I've got the notes here. This is one of the trivia. Let me mark this off for later. The hunting scene. Pete Gent said 100% realistic. He referred to two former Cowboys that they would do this with, named Ralph Neely and Larry Cole, and his quote, "It happened." Said they're out there, and while Nolte and Davis are driving around, you hear the screaming and blasting from the front of the hood, and you hear Nolte just go, "Oh my God, they're shooting at cows." And Mac Davis just goes, "Oh hell, Hoss, they're too drunk to hit anything." And Pete Gent said that Neely and Cole were shooting butterflies, field larks, and yes, an actual mailbox. They did blow a mailbox to pieces. And said they drank. They're just driving around all over while they drank, and said it was just absolute madhouse. So the opening scene, 100% happens according to Jen, and I'm guessing Meredith would have probably told you the same thing, just not on Monday Night Football, because he wouldn't have wanted to get fired. And and this is where you learn that Pete Gent or the movie Phil Elliott. Forgive me if I get lost at times, but Phil Elliott loves to give Joe Bob shit, and it just pisses the hell out of Joe Bob. And on this time, like, there's Joe Bob firing away. And he goes, "You know what, Joe Bob? What's that? What's that, Phil Elliott?" And he's like, "Freud says that shotgun there is just a substitution for your dingle," and walks off giggling. And you see like Joe Bob just look at him with murder in his eyes. Says, "You son of a bitch! You son of a bitch!" And the thing is, like, Seth, he loves Seth to death. Like, offensive lineman loves his quarterback, and Seth doesn't want him to kill Joe Bob, but he begs Phil to stop taunting Joe Bob, because he goes, "Hey man, you might get me touchdowns and get my name on the stat sheet, but Joe Bob keeps me out of the mortuary." And so if you ever wonder why quarterbacks sometimes put up with way too much from their linemen, there's your reason. They want these guys to love them unconditionally and know that if they're ever hurt, they've lost any chance they ever have of winning. It's legendary. I guess Dan Marino would he stayed a good job not getting touched. He did a good job not getting touched in Miami when he played for the Dolphins, and they said he would just buy his offensive linemen Rolexes, cars. He would just, hey, you take care of me and I'll take care of you boys. So you've got a little idea of the dynamic here at play, and it goes into overdrive right away because scene two here is the team party where they just let the NFL wants you to think everybody's choir boys. They're all going home to their wives. They're going to church, and what they are as you find out, guys with a lot of pressure on them, and on a team like the Cowboys, a lot of pressure, and they are gonna blow off steam hard, and they're not blowing it off the night of the game. These guys, because they need to go in and start popping Advil and painkillers and whatever, and get ready for the next game. But it's some like, I think it was an appliance guy that's throwing this big team party. I think they throw him in the pool. Joe Bob is just terrorizing the female guests and saying horrible things to them, and he's basically gets a hold of one of them, and like he's about to rape her or something. It looks like that's where it's headed. And here's Phil, who meets this nice woman, and and he can tell there's something different about her because she's a female, she's there, and she's intelligent. And then she can kind of sense in him, well, there's a little more to this guy. There's a little intelligence there, along with him trying to show he fits in with the good old boys and the alpha males. And she's over there working on a gal, and he is just I think this is the part where he tells them, well, people like Joe Bob, because she's getting really upset because he's getting really grabby with this other girl at the party, and Phil explains to her, well, see, guys like Joe Bob are here to let us know the biggest and the meanest still make the rules. And she goes, well, I don't agree with that. And Phil just kind of laughs and goes, well, hell, agreement, don't enter into it. And so she storms off away from him. A little time goes by, and then, so there's time for Joe Bob to get in more trouble. Phil goes to Mac Davis and tells him, hey, can you give Joe Bob something to do with his hands? And he manages to get away from him, and blah, blah, blah. Well, then a couple of the other boys, one of them's dancing with a gal, heads to the bathroom. Then his buddy starts dancing with the gal, and she comes back, and they're cutting in on each other. And the next thing you know, they're in a brawl, firing haymakers at each other. And then they're getting kind of exhausted. And then one of them just looks at the other, grabs him by the face, plants a kiss on his lips, and then the two of them start dancing. And she's just like, oh, hell, what the hell do I do now? So that's, kind of funny, despite the fact that you've got teammates just firing away and fighting and ripping each other's shirts to pieces. So the little time goes by, and there's Joe Bob with the gal that Phil was talking to. And he's just picked her up by her shoulders, holding her in the air, and telling her like how he loves her different body parts. And so Phil's just like, shit, because he knows what the right thing to do is, and he goes over, hey, Joe Bob, and tries to turn him around, and he's like, piss off, Elliot, and he tries to do him again, and Joe Bob, just holding her now by one arm, just gives Phil a toss and sends him like across the room. So he comes up and is like, hey, Joe Bob, and he's yanking the arm off her, and he just turns around, grabs him by the throat. And you can, I don't know if it was just fine acting, but it looks like Nolte's genuinely starting to turn a little purple. And he's just hanging onto that arm with both hands, can't do it. And Bo Svensson was originally known for Walking Tall, where, the small town sheriff that fought back, I guess they were moonshiners, and just beat everybody up with a big old 2x4 he carried around with him. Well, he is not a skinny, tall man in this. He's got to be like 6'5". His neck is just corded with muscle and just the wire popping while he's choking like Phil literally about to death before Mac Davis gets a hold of him, manages to break it up, and immediately he throws him away and just turns around to Mac like a 10-year-old. Why is he always gotta make fun of me, Seth? And he's almost in tears. Obviously he's drunk. But yeah, you kind of sense this. It's like here's what hurts most about Phil constantly poking fun at him is he wants Phil to like him. He really wants Phil to like him. He wants Phil to think he's a good guy and funny. And so it you can see it hurts him that Phil not only made fun of him, but now is keeping away from what he probably thinks is a romantic overture. So you can just see these guys it's a shit show. And as Jim was trying to say, pretty much every team had guys like this. Now you have the Hartman character, the backup religious quarterback, wander into that with his wife, and now we're getting out of here. Getting a little loud for us, and they invite Phil to come over to their house for dinner and a Bible reading, and he's like, I don't know if that's me, guys, and come on, we really want you. He's like, I'll think about it. And just the classic, I just need to get away from this conversation as quick as I can. So next day, so Tuesday, the coaches called him in, and this is where you get to meet. His name's B.A. G.D. Spradlin's character is B.A. He's Tom Landry, and but first Phil meets the owner, Steve Forrest, playing the the guy who's Clint Murchison, who's just going on and on about how his football team's the most important thing in the world to him. And you know what the most important thing in the world, Phil? And he's like, well, imagine you're going to say money. And he goes, no, it's luck. I don't care. Everybody, all these geologists can look, but I just want the luckiest guy who's hitting oil every time he drills. He may not even know how to add 2 and 2, but if he's that lucky, I want him around me. And hard to argue with that logic if you find people that lucky and they continue to be lucky. But anyway, it's time to meet BA, and BA just goes over to sit by the computer. He's got the computer that just it's the Wang, it's the equivalent of the Wang. It's the screen with the green pixel, like giant big pixel letters, and he just proceeds to go down there and he's looking at all these readouts and then tells Phil, see, that's what these numbers say. It's your attitude. Say what? That's my first part is they never really explain why. Phil's character never really goes off on it too much, but how the hell is even now, let alone then, is he's trying to say he's seeing an attitude problem there. And he tells him also, he's going to be on the bench, and Phil is saying Phil can't help but be a smart ass even when he shouldn't. And I think this time he says, he's talking about, you need to show some effort and a good attitude and all this. He goes, well, I scored 2 touchdowns. That's a pretty good attitude. And he goes, you scored those touchdowns. The team scored those touchdowns. We let you score those touchdowns. And Phil's, he's trying to be, that guy doing the right thing for the team. And then he's calling him immature because he doesn't he's benched now for this younger black player Delmar, and nothing racial about it in the movie, that they're showing. That's actually showing correctly that probably locker rooms were the first place you really saw the color barriers being broken. Sure, Jackie Robinson didn't have a happy integration into Major League Baseball, but at the end of the day, when it happened and everybody was in there, you found a lot of teams where the majority, a lot of the racism is disappearing because they're like, these guys can help us win. I know I've said this before, but it was these guys can help us win. Now that I've actually sat down, gotten to know them, instead of just hearing horrible things, my friend Billy Earl says, not really that different from us. and let's get going. But it's weird to think of sports as where color barriers are being broken. I've always just thought that, but believe that reading some books, that basically, yeah, wasn't my idea originally. I'm absolutely stealing it from others, but I agree with it 100%. So anyway, he's mad about being on the bench, but he knows he can produce, but he's being benched because of things like attitude and immaturity when he busts his ass in practice. And BA says, yes, I know you give 100%, but you're always trying to be the individual. And he's not completely wrong there. But it seems like it's a bit harsh for someone who can produce like his character obviously can. But anyway, he's trying to make the best of it, though. He finally says, look, BA, and I don't like because he's been starting for 6 straight years. I don't like being on the bench. He goes, but if it'll help the team, I will just do my best when I'm in there. And he goes, but he has a great line. He goes, but I'll tell you one thing. When you do finally start me again, I will make you proud that you did. Which, to me, that's the right answer. So there he is, team versus individual. And I like the line where BA doing his best Landry, and I could see Landry saying this, was talking about, a football team being 45 finely meshed gears. And I believe for years that was the roster. The max active roster size was 45. So, he's not being, it's funny. It's like Phil's not the one being out and out rebellious, even though he's the team rebel. You can see he's trying to make it work with BA. And when we get to the trivia, I've got an interesting story about the Pete Gent Landry relationship that might surprise you. All right, so next scene. Let's see. We have a team film and meeting. You catch an interesting thing here that BA is getting on set. He shows this play where they if you see from the beginning of the movie when Phil's having his flashbacks, he's flashing back to making some great catches and scoring the final 2 touchdowns to win the game. And so here he is, and they're showing it on film, and they zip one in there. Elliott makes a nice catch, and everybody's nice and kind of clapping in the film room. And BA turns around and not incorrectly goes, no. It's like you all are cheering, but I'm sorry. Look at Delmar here. He is wide open, and you were thrown into coverage that you shouldn't, and not hitting the open man. And he goes, I don't like this buddy stuff. Now, we get it. G.D. Spradlin as BA is supposed to be the jerk, but then they run the film again, and you see Delmar like on a wheel route, just wide open down the sideline, while Meredith, or here I go again with the names, where Seth has thrown it into triple coverage, and Elliott made a great catch. It's absolutely a horrible decision, but he doesn't mind it because he knows if Phil's there, he'll get it to a spot where only Phil can catch it, and Phil's going to make that catch. So to him, it's about the same percentage as hitting a wide open Delmar, because I get the feeling he doesn't trust Delmar's hands as much. So that goes on. Now, anybody who pops off, BA's turning around, watch your mouth. He's doing it times 5 if Phil says anything, as we'll see in another couple scenes. And you hear, and then after he gives that dressing down, Seth just kind of turns around and not that quietly goes, hell, you can't win for losing around here in this shithole, or something like that. And BA turns and gives him a dirty look, and Seth gives the dirty look right back to BA, and you realize BA knows he can't win without him. And on this team, in this movie, he knows he's got the best quarterback, and so he's not going to. He might criticize the play, but if Seth smarts off, he's not going to turn around and blow up and embarrass him in front of the room. That's a nice little touch I don't catch so much the first time around, because it reappears a couple of times. Seth is not going to take any shit from him because he knows he's indispensable. That kind of wild. So, well, then we go to more on the film, and here's this lineman, Stallings, who just completely whiffs on a block, looks silly doing it, and everybody's laughing, and then BA just loses his shit for good. He just blows up. You're laughing? That can cost us this and cost us a championship? And you laugh? And just start screaming, Stallings, what were you doing there? And all of a sudden there's Stallings, just look at the guy who wants to crawl in a hole and die. Well, the actor, this happened in real life to the actor that played him, who was on the Cowboys with Pete Gent and Meredith. He was Gent's Cowboy teammate. This scene was pretty much a reenactment of real life. His name was Jim Boeke, Boeke, and it was funny. He and after it came out and he was interviewed, and he actually, I guess, got into acting, did a few other movies, but he said, here's the thing, it happens to everybody sooner or later. And he goes, when you're young, it doesn't happen as much. As you get older, it starts happening more often. And he goes, and then that happened to him, and boom, that was it. He missed a block, got yelled at, career over. They cut him, no one picked him up. And what's funny is in the net practice the next day, here goes. Or I think it was that night. Whatever. Next time there, you see him in the locker room. Here's Seth in his locker, and Phil. They sees him. They're carrying his shit out. They've got a box full of Stallings gear. That he doesn't get back, the team gear. And one guy reaches in because you see a nice pair of cleats in there, and one of his ex teammates grabs those. Hang on, let me take those. And you hear one of the black dudes go, "Man, that is cold." And he's just like, "Hell, he don't need them anymore." And they're both right. That was that. Nolte goes up to Mac Davis and goes, "Did you see that? You see that what he did to Stallings?" And Seth doesn't even turn around and he goes, "Who's Stallings?" Boom. Seth's moved on. He knows it's. It doesn't tell me he's cold. Maybe just cold from seeing enough of it, because he looks like he's very much playing a veteran quarterback here. He just knows there's nothing he can do about it. He knows he's not going to be on the phone with him the next day. That when you're cut, life moves on, and you're dead to that team unless somebody else picks you up. And then you run into each other and talk. But other than that, you don't go out of your way. It's the career you've chosen for yourself. You were lucky enough to play, and I'm telling you, most of these guys know it doesn't last forever. No, it's absolutely not going to last forever. They hope it does, but the first time you get cut, I think you're looking at it in a different way. Dan Marino never experienced this, but I'm guessing several of Dan Marino's linemen did. It's funny when it comes to the linemen. We talk about him in this movie. Is Henry Lutovsky was here for the Big Ten media days. And I asked him, and it's just because I had a thing in my mind, and I realized it was the joking Nebraska motto. And I said, "So Henry, Nebraska jokingly had the motto, Nebraska, it's not for everyone." And I said, "I've really always thought the offensive line, it's not for everyone. With what you guys go through, it's like you're not even having a chance probably to start for 2 years. At that point, you're just working out, you're building up, you're getting beat up on scout teams." You're going through, and he had just mentioned some of the stuff they go through when they're young, and now they're doing it to the younger guys, and it's just kind of the culture is toughening up the linemen. And I said, and I've just read a thing where there's more attrition at that position probably than any other, just because of what they go through. And so I said, "What is it for you that really makes you want to be a lineman? It's not fun and games." And he goes kind of like, if you ever watch Friday Night Lights, the show, and when they made Tim Riggins the special teams coordinator, he's almost quoting. He goes, "Yeah, we're never hearing our names called when other guys are hearing theirs called every other play. We just do it because it makes. I think those of us that go through it, because we just do it because it makes us proud. You take a lot of pride in what you do, and knowing that you're not getting the glory. And I still think if there's a place you're gonna get it, it's gonna be here, because this place is just thirsty for a good offensive line. Because once you've got like that 94, 95 level line, then everybody's going to know the starting five on the line. But I thought that was interesting, just the pain these guys go through, and then their Stallings. That's where I started thinking after I was doing this tonight. Okay, Lutovsky said that, and we're just talking about putting up with it in college. Now you're going to the NFL, where Jesus, I'm sure the money's better. Well, maybe not the first year anymore, but if you're good. But now you've gone through all this, and then you're starting to get cut, and then you realize, hey, this isn't something I do till I'm 65, and no one does in sports. But yeah, that's Stallings' cutscene. That's a little bit of a bitch, because when they end that meeting, they do a good shot of him just sitting there with the look on his face, and he knows he's a dead man walking. He knows he's taken at least for the Cowboys, or I'm sorry, the North Dallas Bulls, not an NFL team. He knows he's taking his last snap. So, that's a real lifting scene there. And then they go to practice in a high school basketball gym, and you see Nolte get crunched at one point because he's burned this linebacker, or maybe just giant strong safety named Douglas, and Douglas ain't having a good day. He burns Douglas. Charles Durning, whose job it is, whereas BA is the stoic Tom Landry type at practice and games, Durning's the one who screams at everybody. And he yells at Douglas after he got beat, and he goes, "Douglas, He goes, when we drafted you, it was because you were fast and smart. Now we'd be happy if you were just one of those things. So he's already pissed, and he's going over to the water, and there's Elliot there, all ready to make friends again. He goes, "Yeah, Douglas, isn't just one of those days where you could just wish you were sitting by a warm fire reading a nice book?" And he just turns to Elliot and just goes, "Fuck you," and storms off. And then they put in Hartman for Seth, and here's Hartman doing the all right, Hud, and he's hustling and he's all being young and peppy. And I think Seth says something like, "How is an old fart like me supposed to keep up with that kind of youthful exuberance?" But those of you that remember the Cowboys, remember they were the first ones that were running the shotgun in the 70s. But every time they went to the line and they start calling the count after the first hut, they do this stand up, slap hands, and then go back down into their stance. And it was it was a very obvious thing that they were doing, and they're doing it in this movie. And they're doing it just to a little more, I guess I should put it here, little middle finger at the Cowboys going, yeah, you're not the Cowboys, but we're totally mimicking your uniforms, your players, and now even your offensive line gestures or presets or whatever you want to call it. So that's really funny. And then Hartman's hustling to the line, and then here comes the line, no respect, just walking up slowly behind him. And then they have him run a couple of plays, and and you can just see it. He's checking, and so they're constantly having to stand back up and get back set every time he checks. And finally, Joe Bob turns around like he's just going to haul off and punch him. And Charles Durning, knowing he's a little young religious wacko, just goes, "Hartman, just call the goddamn play," and they're just run the goddamn play. And so that they come back and they go to the line. And this time, Bo Svensson goes prancing up and does a big little hop in the air and slaps into position while the rest of them are walking up. And Hartman's kind of looking around confused. So great scene. They get Nolte back in there. Douglas has been made fun of and chewed out by Durning. And Douglas this time just flat tackles. Still makes the catch. Elliott makes this catch and just gets hard tackled to a wood gym floor. And just laying there. And here's Douglas. "Hey, sorry, man." And he actually looks a little sorry. You can tell it's he's not totally sorry because he just caught a bunch of shit over it, but you can tell he's a little sorry. Wasn't really looking to put him down there with his eyes rolling in the back of his head and the smelling salts. My God, did they use the smelling salts? So there's Phil just getting the shit beat out of him in practice now. And let's see. Oh, and then you've got what do I want to say? There's an Ohio State. Oh, after the wipeout, one of them just goes, "Oh man, too much B12, too much B12." And so, oh no, that's after. Okay, I jump on that too quick. Apologize. Practice is over. They go downstairs. They're all getting dressed. Nolte's getting the shot in his hip and just getting the painkiller shots. And here's Joe Bob in a three-piece suit with a briefcase, and he starts, poor Joe Bob, just this big monster. And you can tell he's happy like a little kid because he talked to this guy, and he not only does he have the idea for a restaurant, franchises. It's going to have franchises, Phil. And he's like, "Franchises, huh?" And he's like, "What idiot is giving you this money?" And he tells him it's some big cowboy booster. And he goes, "I even got a name for it." And it's like, "What's that, Joe Bob?" And he's getting all excited. He wants Phil to love this idea. He's like, "Joe Bob's Fine Foods. What do you think?" And Phil goes, "Joe Bob's Fine Foods. Yeah, eat here or I'll kill you." And Joe Bob's just charges him. Was another one of the defensive linemen and the trainer are hanging on to him, and he is just again neck wire popping, trying to go. Phil's back there going, and then you can see that he is just furious and won't let it go. And then you see Phil kind of going, "Sorry," he's realizing I shouldn't be picking on Joe Bob so much, and he does. He sounds like a little kid. First, the trainer has to settle him down and go "Knock it off right now, or I'll tell BA what you're doing." He goes, "You wouldn't." He goes, "You're damn right I would." And this guy's half of Joe Bob's size. And he's like, "You little chicken shit." And he's pissed and finally yanks himself away from the defensive lineman, and whose name is Monroe. And I think they'll end up in a fight at practice when the coaches don't think they're getting fired up enough for the game at Thursday's practice. And he finally pulls his dignity together, brings the collar in, and then just goes, "Always did take two of you. Stop one of me." Puts that chin in the air and walks out as proud as he can. But yeah, and then that's when the trainer throws down the needle and goes, "Too much B12." And I'm like, wow, so even in the 60s, they called the steroids B12s. Because I hadn't thought about that, because I remember Roger Clemens, he claimed his steroids were B12, and a doctor being interviewed one night had to explain to everyone that shooting B12 in just your ass cheeks won't do anything for you, but have ass cheeks that are really B12'd up. Whereas that's the place to, that hip or whatever was where you fired in the steroids. And then I thought of that because I just saw Inside Ohio State. All I will say is their scandal is even worse than Penn State's. It's on HBO Max. And these players, even though they were never told they were getting steroids, but their pervert doctor was also their steroid supplier and injector. So one of the reasons I guess they let him just molest and sexually assault everyone is because they were afraid if they fired him or turned him in, he'd turn around and expose their steroid use. But anyway, and in that, though, they told us we were getting B12. So B12 seems to be the magic name for steroids. Let's see real quick here. So anyway, there's where we are, and it's time for, and I believe I got a shot of this for which all of you will be so grateful. It's time for Phil and Mac to hang around naked, drinking beer. Behind them, you see the medicine cabinet. So they're going in there. They're stealing the poor trainer. One moment he's fighting an offensive lineman to keep him from killing a wide receiver. Then he walks in on these two in the little metallic hot tubs. They're both drinking a fresh Budweiser out of his fridge, and they've just got a pile of pills, and they're popping the pain pills. and he just loses it. He goes like, "Hey, you can't take them pills," and they take them real quick, and he goes, "And stay out of my goddamn beer." and the two of them like snatch the beers away before he can grab them. and he goes, "Elliot," looking at him in the hot tub, "I swear to God, you better not piss in there." And Nolte just does the best. And the trainer's just like, "You son of a bitch." I mean, not just, "Hey, you old son of a bitch." There is just nothing but hatred and venom, and it's just the drugs, the beers, and now you farted in my hot tub. It's like, get out. So we go to another meeting, and if you guess that somebody's going to get in trouble in this meeting as well, you would be correct. And it's once again, you're faced with different rules for Seth Maxwell, different rules for him. But anybody else, fuck it. So they're showing film. He's popping off, and he's making cracks in the dark. And then the lights go on. He makes a crack with the lights on, and it makes Phil laugh. And I know where Phil's coming from. If I had a disease in high school, not that I wasn't plenty of smart ass, when I had my chances, but there were certain classes where I was scared to death to be the smart ass because I knew I was already in 3 strikes you're out. But I've had 15 strikes. I try to disrupt the class in any way. Not only am I going to get a not fun yelling at in class, my parents are probably getting a call, and I'm going straight to detention, and I'm going to miss a practice. And you look forward to practices in high school. Maybe occasionally you're tired, but no, detention, no. I want to be at practice, and also you're going to be running more at practice when they find out that you missed it because you're in detention. Anyway, so there's Seth. He pops off a crack in Elliot's ear. Elliot does the old and doing his best. And yeah, Seth made the crack. BA knows he made the crack, but he is so tired of Elliot not being 100% part of them 45 gear mesh gears. And he turns on, and Elliot, what, are you all right? And he's like, "Oh, just caught something in my throat." He goes, you should be paying attention to this more than anyone. So there he is reaming Elliott while Seth skates because BA doesn't have the balls to treat Seth the way he treats the rest of the players. Maybe this is also where we just admit quarterbacks are a different animal. But you don't want to be seen, I think, like in the open warfare with the coach. I know quarterbacks should get a little more string for what they have to bear. They should, but man, I think you want to not be an open revolt with your coach where Seth appears to be when he's just staring right back. Yeah, it's a little bit of a messy locker room, as you can tell. So, let's see. Before this meeting too, it's not quite a montage, but you get to see more of Elliott just waking up in the morning and kind of having to physically put himself together. And I don't talk about her a lot because I didn't like the storyline as much time as the storyline took up, and it just sounds like I hate women in sports movies. I don't. And one-on-one, I love Annette O'Toole, but I like it when they're more of a part of it and don't take it over when they're not a giant part of it. Like we talked about Warrior, Jennifer Morrison in Warrior, who plays Joel Edgerton's wife, the main character. She is a big part of that movie and should be. She's fantastic. So no, it's not just anti-women. Maybe I'm just anti-women in some of the 70s, 80s sports movies where their characters maybe weren't getting they're trying to give them a fair shake, but for whatever reason, it wasn't working. But you see through her eyes just him popping the joints. The sound his back makes has her like openly nauseous a little bit, and then he and Seth are taking a steam at one point, and in a not funny line at all, Seth just looks at him, kind of staring off into space, and says, "You know what's scary, partner, is I think I'm starting to enjoy the pain." And there's times you can kind of feel that when you play sports where it's not debilitating, but it's there, and it kind of feels like a badge of honor, even though you might look at somebody else doing the same thing and going, "You weirdo, put some ice," or God, take a day off, that kind of thing. So at this point, Delmar, the guy who's kind of replacing Elliott in the lineup, he has a hamstring issue and he doesn't like shots. And so they're trying to pump Elliott up at these last couple of practices, and they're dangling him with "give us what you got and you'll start." And they're doing this in front of Delmar because they want to get Delmar taking the painkillers so he can be 100% allegedly. And so Elliott really, I mean, it is a it's a definite psychological game that I'm sure NFL coaches play, and it's awful just looking at it from the standpoint of the athlete. As a coach, I never really coached anyone above 18 years old. It ended at least in boys and girls hockey at the high school level, and I wouldn't dream of doing that to a high school kid. I'd look for another way to get a better effort, because what happens at the end? Here we go. Here we go before the game, and you see Elliott getting taped up all over hell, and then they're shooting him in the knees, and he's telling Delmar, it's like, "Well, why don't you do this?" Like, "Oh man, I hate those needles." He's just scared to death of needles, and he doesn't like what he thinks the drugs can do to him. He's like, you can't even feel nothing. How do you know if you're hurt? Got a point, but he just likes to put hot packs on everything, and now it's like hot packs are about the worst thing you can do, especially pregame. Now it's it's ice. But so he's just doing hot packs. Then you see them needling up, and then the coach comes in. "Elliott, you're starting, my man." And so he's yes, and so he's all set. He's taken every pill, needle, tape they can put on him, and he's ready to go. And then Delmar watches that, and yeah, everybody wants to start. Yeah, he's like, and you just hear him go, "Fuck it, come here," and he's about to get his hamstring, cryoed up there. And so the game, there's the pregame. It's pretty funny. Durning's just yelling at everybody. He has one volume. It's just top volume. And like at one point, he's like, 5 minutes till kickoff, 5 minutes. And he's just screaming it over and over. And then after 5 minutes, one of the players on his way, how long, coach? 5, fuck you. Because he knows he's just being made fun of. And then he yells at everybody, like the priest is getting ready to say the prayer. And he goes, hey, and remember, you're on national TV tonight, so no picking your nose or scratching your nuts. It's awesome. And then he's like, sorry, coach, to BA, because BA's looking at him like, shut up, you moron. So you've got you've got the priest in there. The priest is just in this packed 45-man locker room, praying, trying to put hands on everyone's head, bless everyone, and then amen. And he's trying to stagger to his feet as he says amen. He's been tripping over these guys. And you just hear somebody, probably Matuzak, let's go beat these cocksuckers. Only very, very loudly. And so off they go. And then the next thing you see, they're losing. and like all that fire is just out. It's a rainy night in Chicago. There's just mud all over them. It could look like Soldier Field, except you can see kind of chain link fences here and there. I mean, Soldier Field is just a giant pile of concrete. Well, still is. So probably not too many just standing fences there. But earlier they've had Joe Bob, and the linemen, but especially Joe Bob. There's this defensive tackle for Chicago. I think his name is like Alcy Weeks or AC Weeks. And he is just running over them. He is running over Joe Bob. He's pancaking Joe Bob, and Joe Bob's an offensive lineman. He's beating the shit. Like Mac Davis is just covered in mud. I always love a good, when it happens to you in your real life. One time you appreciate in movies is that big chunk of sod like on the helmet. He's got kind of sod helmet going. He's just muddy. He's bleeding because AC Weeks has been beating the shit out of him. And he lets him know. He goes, I don't care what you got to do. He's killing me. Get him out of there. And they do a little trap block and do the high low and break his knee and just snap him. And he's there screaming. He's there screaming on the ground, freaking out, and carried off on a stretcher. And you can see Joe Bob's actually in a little bit of tears from the beating he's taking. And they go back to the huddle, and the one lineman goes, Joe Bob, I think we hurt him. I think we hurt him really bad. And Joe Bob just turns around, looks at him, and just goes, fuck him. And it's cold-blooded. It's not a funny one. It is cold-blooded. Well, and since they're losing, you probably know what's coming next. It's time to go to Delmar. He's stud athlete, he's supposed to be a receiver, but it feels like he's coming out of the backfield sometimes. Anyway, he kind of he runs a little out, catches it, starts tearing upfield, and then if you've ever done this, you've done it. Rip goes that hamstring, so straight goes that leg, down goes one hand to hold the back of the leg because you just feel that guitar string break, and then starts hopping on the one leg, and somebody just comes over the top of him, boom, and you see his face mask go ripping off and some blood fly. They reenacted that, I think, as an homage in Unnecessary Roughness when the center, their Samoan center, finally got the Hillbilly Joe linebacker from those dang Texas State, whatever they were. And that is straight out of North Dallas 40. It rips his face mask off. His nose just is like not even there. And I've heard a ref who got to see that up close in a hockey game once describe it, where it just looks like two nostrils like stuck to your cheek or something. And Phil is standing there going, oh my God, get out here. It's like he's out. And then he's kind of, blubbering, semi-conscious, and there's just blood everywhere. And he's like, BA, and he's like, Elliot, get back in the huddle. And he's like, but look at his nose. My God, look at his nose. Like his face is just destroyed. And he's like, Elliot, you get back in that huddle or get off the field, which, he's basically telling him, get back in there or you're going to be cut. You've played your last down for us. So he gives him this disbelieving look. In the trivia, one thing I found in the notes was supposedly that was 100% Tom Landry. And it's easy to see why when you've got this many coaches, this many players, and things happen the way they do. As a hockey coach, I would be out there with that player, but it's younger players. You're not going to blow off the younger injured player. NFL football, they said he would at that point, he's the injured player's the trainer's problem, and he is over talking to whoever's going in for him. I don't have a problem with that at the pro, even the D1 level. That they've still got a game to call. People get hurt in football. I didn't see that. I was kind of on BA's side on that one instead of Phil's. So, but I get it. That's up close. That had to be horrible looking. So anyway, so now Delmar's gone. So we've seen two pretty awful looking injuries in a short span. But now Phil Elliott's in. They only have about 16 seconds left. They're just trying to send the game to overtime. I thought the first time I saw it, it fooled me. I thought, okay, we're going to get some overtime. He's going to get the winning touchdown. I didn't realize the baseball rule on how things are going to end. If you need one run, if you're tied and need a run to win, or if you're behind by one and need one, you're probably, if you're tied or better, if you're tied, you're going to win. If you're down one, you're going to lose. And there's going to be something horrible. So he scores to make it 17-16, makes a great catch. And then, remember that muddy, rainy field? The guy misses the extra point, and I think they missed the playoffs because of that. So horrible times. And they got a great shot. Mac Davis did a really good job. I mean, nobody's in Nolte's league in this movie, but Mac Davis is pretty good. You really sense the dandy Don if you ever saw Don Meredith on Monday Night Football. So lose the game. Next day, meeting in it feels like, well, what do they do now? You're called back to the owner's office. Here are these two guys. One of the ones who was spying on him and caught him and Seth smoking weed. So that's basically what they're doing. They're there to report conduct unbecoming, smoking an illegal drug. And here's, and I've got pictures. And Seth's kind of in the shadows. And Elliot even goes, well, I wasn't alone there. Who was with me? The investigator starts coughing, and the guy in charge is, we did not get a look at the other party involved. And he's like, yeah, I bet you didn't. And yeah, so what's happening is that, they make it sound like the two owners are like, how dare you betray our trust? And he's just like, oh, you two are full of shit. And he goes over, and BA actually becomes like, this is what I'm saying. BA is a little human. And he's he's telling him, come on, BA, I know you can't be a part of this. And he's like, Phil, we talked about it. You just didn't have character. You've got to leave something behind. And he's like, leave something behind. He's like, there's pieces of me on 28, 28 football fields. That's leaving something behind, isn't it? And BA at this point, you can see his heart's not really in it anymore. First of all, he's lost his best option, the guy that just won him his last two games with 3 touchdowns and minimal playing time. It's like, yeah, maybe we're not giving him enough time. And then he goes, well, they're starting to tell him about his contract and all this. Oh, so this is just about my stupid contract. Well, I'll make it easy for you. I quit. And then you just see the owner and and his son start smiling, and that's all they wanted. They wanted him to quit, save them some money, and so he's done. But he goes up to BA and he goes, tell me this, BA. When I played, I was pretty damn good, something along those lines. And BA goes, Phil, you were probably one of the best receivers I've ever seen play. And at the end, you see Phil. It's like, yeah, I'm not on a team, but it finally felt, it's almost worth it. His face says it's almost worth it to quit just for him to finally acknowledge that for once. So good ending. Just, hilarious movie, but I love the way it, really got into the brutality, the drug use, which the NFL hated a little bit. Nothing I've heard since then. Maybe they try to overblow that everybody's doing it, but they didn't really show everybody doing it. Just a good chunk instead of, a roster of 43 Sunday worshiper sky pilots and 2 guys that are the real problem. And it also showed that I wanted to save this for last. I'm going to find this in here. Let's see. Is John Matuzak, after that game ends, it gets super pissed because he wants, here's another guy, Big John Matuzak. And we're going to talk about him a little. So let's start with this. Matuzak, an insane guy. When he played, was just an absolute psychopath. And sometimes when he didn't play. Here it is. His name was O.W. Shattuck, and I think it was Pete Gent and the director and producer, whoever, said they had him read this line or this little piece for the movie, and they said they knew they had their guy. Said he absolutely nails it. Now, one thing you got to realize about John Matuzak is at that party, for instance, they show him and he's picking up a punch bowl, like one of those giant punch bowls, and drinking from it, spilling half of it on himself. His shirt's off, and then he finally just holds it and he just like roars at the top of his voice like he's a damn lion or something, like just one of those. Supposedly when he played at Tampa, he played for Tampa University of Tampa University, and they said it wasn't unusual for him to go drinking, put away some beers, and they said inevitably he ripped his shirt apart, buttons flying, and would just start roaring like a lion in the bar. So that's what he's already done in the movie. He's always hanging with Joe Bob, who we all know and love now, and he comes in there and Charles Durning now starting to yell at him. You guys didn't do this. You guys didn't do that. And he goes, hey, he goes, we work harder than anybody to win, but man, when we're dead tired in the fourth quarter, winning's got to mean more than just money. And the coach goes, you were hired to do a job. And he goes, job? I don't want no fucking job. I want to play football, you asshole. I want some feelings. I want some fucking team spirit. And the coach goes, this ain't no high school. And this is where he just loses it. And he goes for Charles Durning, and he's like ripping his jacket off. He's tearing at his shirt as he's just attempting to escape Matuzak in that locker room. And he's going, you and BA and the rest of you coaches are all chicken shit cocksuckers. No feeling for the game at all, man. You'll win, but it'll just be numbers on a scoreboard. Numbers, that's all you care about. Fuck, man, that's not enough for me. And he's like, I don't have to listen to this. Oh, yes, you do. You got to listen to me for once. All you coaches are chicken shit cocksuckers. You're all chicken shit cocksuckers. And then at the top of his lungs, God damn you. Like, and I'm watching like, whoa, this is not an actor. This is a football player. And then there's Phil Elliott. And I get the feeling this was probably genuine on the first take, or the first time a cameraman caught him doing it. There's Nick Nolte kind of sitting in his locker, leaning back, just this slight smile on his face. And he just goes, far out. And just looks genuinely stunned like everyone. And I'm telling you, it's something else. It is the most fired up you'll be watching that movie, is watching that is him. Because before that, right before that, he unleashes the line, when we call it a game, you call it a business. And when we call it a business, you call it a game. And the time I thought of that immediately was when Le'Veon Bell held out for the Steelers. And the Steelers they were going to franchise him. Nobody wants to give a running back a long-term contract after 3 years because the actuarial charts basically show they got 4 good years and they're done. And it's played out. That has played out over time. I believe the only lower paid position than running back in the NFL is fullback, because fullback's the dying breed of running back. So they're paid even less. And like kickers are paid more than running backs, because kickers will kick for 10 to 15 years, see their salaries go up, get, increases in arbitration, where running backs, are lucky to play. If they're really good, they'll play the 3 years on their rookie contract, and then, either go to arbitration, which I don't think, or they'll just franchise them if they're really good, knowing that and then I think they can do it one more year if they go, whoa, get to 5 good years and still effective. So that I got the whole, we call it a job, you call it a business, because Le'Veon Bell, man, he's like, well, you know what, my choice is not play. I am not going to play this season, and I'm going to leave you high and dry for a running back. And yeah, and that's what it was. And the wildest thing is the center, and maybe it was Mike Pouncey back then, or I don't know if we're going too far back, but the center for the Steelers, not only is he a teammate, but he's their player rep. And then there he is on TV going, and this guy apparently doesn't have any feelings for the team here. It's all about him and the money. And so here it is. It's like he asked for a large, he says, I want to stay with this team. I want to be part of it. but I have been ripping it up, and I feel like I deserve a contract increase. Hey, I'm calling it a game, but I'd like to be paid. And then the Steelers come back, well, we can franchise you. So it's like, oh, we're not going to call it a game. Now it's a business, nothing personal. We're not going to give you a raise because it's a business. So he's like, fine, it's a business. I'm going to sit out. I'm not going to come to work. Don't pay me, but you're in a bigger bind than I am. And then his own teammate, whoop, now he's going to call it a game again. Okay, well, no, you're not allowed. We don't like that you're treating it like the business after they treated it like a business. Now we're going to call it a game again, and you're being a horrible teammate for sitting out. So you just feel all of that in the John Matuzak speech. You can find it on YouTube. It's something else. That just, yeah, he's not an actor, actually, but he stayed as an actor. He played Sloth in the Goonies. Our Twos did. Who would have thought the Twos would just become one of the most lovable Spielberg or any other movie characters? Because the old Sloth Chunk relationship was just wonderful. The two outcasts who loved each other. Matuzak was really good at that, even covered in a bunch of makeup. Oh God! All right, so enough of John Matuzak. But yep, so there's your movie. Tell you what, we got the comments going, so I'm going to take a little. And unfortunately, this is just Dr. Pepper Zero right now. Once this is over, I got to get some articles written or at least started so I can publish some more Big Ten football media days stuff tomorrow. So let's see what we got here. And I might forget something. Oh, Fred's here. Yeah, there we go. The comments are alive now. Come on, Tiger Shark. No, you're there too. I take it back. And where's Pinstripe? But is he getting himself so cooked on his pollutants that he's done before the show starts? I miss our guy. And I still have to talk battered bastards. No, we did talk battered bastards. I think we did cross that finally. So, Fred, yeah, just got here. Is the Camp Kenosha highlights? No, but we did. But I did make fun of Northwestern in an article today, pointing out. I pointed out all the things not to expect much from media day. Just expect some optimism, some fire you up quotes. You're not going to learn anything they don't want you to learn. So there's not going to be any amazing revelations for you, most likely. And also get in. I threw a poll on the Coronation website. It just says like Huskers something check. It'll be there. It'll just be one poll. What do you think of Big Ten media days? Does it fire you up? Do you even give a shit? Is it somewhere in the middle? So anyway, yeah, just got here. I did mention Camp Kenosha because I said, here's the thing. My first year at the Big Ten media days 2 years ago, man, like 50% of it was, what's this new guy, David Braun, the Northwestern coach, going to say about those pack of let's get naked with the young guys, make them really uncomfortable freaks that was Northwestern, and probably still is a little bit Northwestern. Because it's like David Braun, man, he got the job. He had just been hired from North Dakota State as a defensive coordinator, I think. Yeah, and that's what he'd been for North Dakota State. He'd never been a head coach at the college level or above, maybe below. I just didn't know if he'd been a high school head coach previously. And the only reason he's becoming Northwestern's new head coach is because he's the only new guy to the staff who just can't possibly have been involved in all that Camp Kenosha grab ass run, fight through your naked offensive lineman kind of weirdness, or what they called their culture. Oh, God almighty. So no, but anyway, none of that this year. So I was going, nobody's riding a scandal into this. Michigan's old news. We're just waiting to see what the MCA comes down with. Tony Petitti, being a good commissioner, had said, I think Michigan, the 3-game suspension Harbaugh is enough. I think they've been through enough. And you know what? If you're the commissioner of your league, that's your job. Stand by your teams. You're not doing your job any favor if you're actively trying to remove vacate a national championship out of your conference. So now, I don't feel the same way. I think a vacated title is still on the table. Teams have had victories vacated for way less worse than an organized cheating scandal along with some destroying evidence and that kind of thing. Very obviously lying to the NCAA investigators, which is like the worst thing you can do. And Connor Stallions was 0% believable that I guess the damning thing is that, hey, why can't I buy tickets for friends and family? That's all I did. And he spent more on tickets for friends and family, which suggests two things. No, you don't have the money to spend more than your salary on tickets, which means somebody else is doing it. And two, you're doing it for a reason, which is film these guys' signs. They've got you. They've got his buddies in the stadiums and the seats he bought. The cameras everywhere now in stadiums. So yeah, they're going down. But yeah, so that's where we're going today. It was just good stuff. Rule was quotable, had some good stuff. Dylan, got a question in on Dylan. He's excited for Holgerson's offense. He just seems to be really. He's always like almost too calm at times, but he's funny too. He got off some good crack ups. Rule made us laugh. I talked about chatting with, asking Lutovsky a question, getting a really good answer about the life of an offensive lineman. That went from what am I going to write about Lutovsky to Lutovsky's getting his own little article now. There's no way not to. Oh God, I love transcribing software. So yeah, there's that. Frost. Here we go. Frost made cracks in the dark. Now, Coach Rule was asked about thoughts on Scott Frost, and Rule's not going to say a bad word about anybody. He did make some great points. He said, I walked into a much better situation than Scott Frost did. He said Trev told him, he goes, I'll be honest, Scott did not have all the resources that Rule walked into. It's like didn't have quite this setup, didn't have that setup, did not have the money. The money that's there now has been accumulated the last few years. And Matt Rule was talking very much about that money, saying he loves how we're positioned long term because we're about the only athletic department in the Power Four that's in the black, that has no debt, and just about everybody else is operating out of the red. And he says he's not afraid. I'll give you this: him, Brett Bielema, and Kurt Signetti. There are three guys that openly embrace what's going on now. Players NIL, about to have revenue sharing, that they're all for. They're basically out of the thing of, hey, these kids, they deserve this money. Just like Happy and Blue Chips, they deserve this money. But he was talking. The thing he's saying is revenue sharing. We're going to be in a great spot in a few years. Well, these other schools are going to be scrambling to make revenue sharing payments because of what they owe, and that's kind of nice to hear. That this Pat Stewart, their GM, it sounds like they're planning long term very well, and he's starting to talk about how it's showing up in the other sports. That here are the other sports now that are turning into consistent winners. Baseball. I grant the regular season's not great, but coming off two back-to-back Big Ten titles is what the record books say. The softball team just came within one run of going to the Women's College World Series. The volleyball win. Have they won a championship in a few years? No. Have they been in the Final Four every year? Yeah. Get to that Final Four and let the chips fall where they may. But it was good stuff from them. But yeah, with Frost, he goes, it wasn't a good fit for him. He goes, I will say that. After reading everything, he's like, no, not a good fit. He's not wrong. I agree with him. He turned and looked. He says, it's a great fit for me. He said, it's a fantastic fit. I am not. You can't get me out of here. And he goes, for me, it works. And he goes, and it works because I walked into a great situation. He goes, what Frost walked. He said Frost walked into, basically a house that needed to just be torn down and rebuilt. He goes, I walked into one that, hey, nobody's cleaned it for a while. It's dusty. There's some vines growing up the side, maybe a broken window or two. But he goes, but the foundation, I don't have to change a thing. There's no big, there's just some trimming and stuff like that. He goes, it was not anything like what I'd said that for the last 5 years. Well, the last 2 years now after Rule, is that they walked into two very different situations. Frost took over for Bo, 7 straight 9+ win seasons. Didn't seem like much then. Seems a little bit different now. Frost walked in, to a Riley disaster. Rule walked into a Frost. Yeah, it looked like a disaster on paper, but Frost walked into a squad that was just getting thrown all over the field. Rule walked into a squad that was going toe to toe in the interior with top 10 teams and losing by 1 score. So, but he said nice things, and and he's not going to say bad things. And I felt, he did, he wasn't like totally glossing it over. Oh no, it's just bad luck. He goes, no, it wasn't a good fit. It just, he was like, things just didn't work. The resources weren't there. It's nice. I don't mind a guy that's not just out looking to pick a fight for some bulletin board stuff at next week's game. I don't mind it now and then, but I just think he's more worried about his own guys, and he's not really worried about getting. He believes if he does his job right, it doesn't matter where the other team's head is. We're going to win. So, what else we got? Yeah, TSD puts it perfect. 70s movies were not big on women's rights. Yeah, they're trying to, and they are making it look like, hey, these players shouldn't be molesting these women, but they're still showing. They're not making it look all right. But it seems like a bit of a Brave New World where it's like, hey, some guys aren't going to stand by and watch this, and that's not, today that should just be the instant relief. And if it's a big guy, go grab friends, but get over there, get it stopped. Call help, get this idiot off that girl. Whereas back then, well, I want him happy on game day. It was kind of how Seth thought about it. It's like he helped break it up, but he's mad at Phil for upsetting his lineman. He's the one that keeps me out of the morgue, I guess. What else we got here? Oh, I watched a great video. How there's like 0 memorable quotes or new characters since about 2005. Andy's review reinforces this. Yeah, there's some good stuff in here quote wise. I didn't go up and down at all, but I loved every time you called a business like I call it a game. Joe Bob's Fine Foods, eat here or I'll kill you. Don't pick your noses or scratch your nuts. We're on national TV. Douglas, we drafted you because we thought you were fast and smart. Now we'd be happy if you were just one of those things. And agreement doesn't enter into it. Rainy night in Chicago with mud all over him. Sounds like a Northwestern hazing. Yeah, I'm guessing if it rained at Camp Kenosha or their practices, then that just kind of fired everything up. What do we got here? Best chunk of sod in a helmet was Cat Boso for Dub Bears versus the Jets Monday Night Football 1991, back when life still had meaning. I don't remember who Cat Boso was, but I love it. I love a good chunk sod in the helmet story when I hear one. So let's see. Yeah, there you go. Fred, I love everything Tooze was in. He's a force of nature. Reminds me of guys I went to school with. Let me jump a little bit here and find because I want to talk about. He played, as I said, he played for Tampa University, and they were. Where did I put it? Write this down. I can probably. Oh no, here we go. So Tampa U. I got a book from a friend of mine, probably about a 10-year-old book, but it was just like the greatest college football teams of all time. And one of them was like 73 Tampa University of Tampa University. They only played like 9 games, 72 or 3. They went 9-0, and then they disbanded the team after that season. That team had not only John Matuzak and his wild ass on defense, getting ready to go from Tampa to the Oakland Raiders, I believe. Was he somewhere first, or was he always with the Raiders? I think I'm thinking of Ted Hendricks, I think, started off with like the Colts, then went to the Raiders, another psycho. And then Freddie Solomon, the 49ers receiver, was on that team, who had quite a career for them. And then Paul Orndorff, who not as many of you remember played for the Chiefs, but many of you might remember was a very famous professional wrestler, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Was he part of the big tag match? Was it Mr. T and Hulk Hogan against Orndorff and Piper, with Cowboy Bob Orton, I think, acting as their manager with the fake broken arm, or running around clubbing people with the cast whenever the referee would shockingly turn his back on the action. But yeah, you had a Tampa team with future NFLer Orndorff, John Matuzak, and Freddie Solomon. Shockingly, they went undefeated. Amazing, right? But yeah, I love Matuzak in anything too. And and he seemed to like not have a. I'm guessing there were some drunken disorderlies with the shirt ripping and lion screaming in college, but I never really remember reading anything about him, literally getting on the wrong side of the law. He kept his felonies between the stripes. And in the 70s, a lot of guys did that. Jack Tatum and, oh God, who was the other one? Tatum's the one who paralyzed Darryl Stingley running at George Atkinson. And he was the one that just tried to knock Lynn Swann unconscious every chance he got. Let's see. So there's our biggest shot. We got a few more. Yeah, what has he said? How long till the treat it like a game, treat it like a business becomes the mantra in college football here in the NIL era? Fine by me. They're out there getting the shit beat out of them in a billions dollar industry, and the thing I get though is a lot of the transferring isn't necessarily about money. Not a lot of guys are hitting the bid process. Rocco Spindler, who just transferred here, alluded to that. He pretty much said that like the money's pretty close to the same, and I'm believing in that because I've read that other places. Athletics done a couple of surveys, and the kids are saying, yeah, it's not too often that there's a bidding war. If you see a bidding war, it's in the one. It's your 1/10 of 1%. It's got like that Nico Iamaleava, where he wanted to be paid more by Tennessee. They wouldn't do it, and then they kicked him off the team for wanting it. And then he went to UCLA, where he was probably entering the portal anyway. And they're like, oh my God, the game, everybody's lost their minds. It's like, there's not, 1,500 Nicos out there. There's one Nico. There's maybe three Nicos. If there's a bidding war, you can probably count the bidding war, the big money bidding wars on one, no more than both hands, which is a fraction of 1%. Most of these guys are like Javen Wright, who I wrote about back in the spring, just because he's a 7th-year player, and I was hoping enough people read it that would destroy the myth of the 7th year. A couple of things. One, that the 7th-year player for some reason is cheating the system to get that 7th year. And I'd say the reason that's ridiculous to me, these are guys that just flat out love the game. They're probably not headed for the NFL. If you're playing your 7th year, through the COVID era, which is COVID year, redshirt year, and then a redshirt injury year, and then you only actually play 4 full years. These probably aren't NFL bound guys at age 25 or 6. They're just not, because most of the time those are the guys that played baseball for a few years, came back, and they were all quarterbacks. But the thing about Javen Wright was he literally was there from where the transfer portal and NIL were a couple of years in the future to be playing it long enough to go from that to it's part of the system. And the way he described it was the way he feels about it. And I imagine he's a starter, so he's probably getting more than a nice little chunk of change. And if he's a starter, why shouldn't he? But he said the thing he thinks about most with that is gratitude, because he said he remembers trying to break into the training table if he was hungry, like rolling around on a little scooter, with that bag of $3 fast food or whatever he'd saved up for, and says he's grateful now. I actually have some money. My parents want to come to a game. I can afford to fly them. And they say, well, flying players around, la-di-da, but people are filling stadiums for tons of money. Why doesn't he deserve to have a little riches if he's one of the ones they're paying to watch? But he just said it's just nice to not have to worry about that stuff anymore. It's like, he goes, I can go straight into football. I can just focus on that. I'm not worried about not having a buck here and there. I've got the bucks, problem solved. And then the other thing is, with the 7th-year player, he went through a shit ton of injuries. So this is like, you might want to just be thinking about quitting, because I think he lost 2 years to clots. There were multiple like bodily injuries to where he just kept fighting back from injury after injury after injury. He'd love a shot at the NFL. Don't get me wrong. He said, I am hoping to get that shot. This is what I'm playing for. I'm going to try my hardest, and hopefully that works out. He goes, if nothing else I've learned about, they say the NFL is all about playing through adversity. He goes, I don't think too many have played through more adversity than me in college. I agree 100%. And this is a guy that, isn't walking around waving. Most of the guys that are, in the middle there, aren't getting $2 million a year contracts and waving their watches and their jewelry at everybody. They're just happy that, now they're going to have a scholarship. And I think the minimum that I heard they were paying, like the guys at the bottom of the roster last season, was the bottom guys probably up through preferred walk-on last year was getting 30 grand. So they turned that for the walk-ons into the scholarship. And now you got the scholarship plus a $30,000 salary, which is still probably grossly underpaid for a college football game. Anyway, so yeah, I'm fine with those guys treat it like a game and like a business. I'm finding out who the coaches are who I think are going to have long-term success simply because it doesn't occur to them to be mad about it. They're not like Nick Saban, great coach, but pulling down $11 million a year and saying, I'm getting out of here because I can't stand the players talking about the money. Well, then, yeah, you should be out. Because if you can, with a straight face, pull down an $11 million salary off the backs of these guys, and then get pissed that they want to make more, that they want some walking around money with the scholarship, and sure, maybe you've got a guy who's a 2-time All-American. Yeah, 500 grand's probably a bargain for this guy. So yeah, don't act. Yeah, I didn't like that act, and I like that rules just rule Bielema Signetti. You're like, these guys deserve it. The Texas Tech softball coach. Remember the Texas fans after Najiri Kennedy won that second game in the Women's College World Series final, and all of a sudden Texas is just lighting up social media like an angry Christmas tree because they pay her $1 million a year for softball, and she pitches all these games. My God, we don't need a pitcher to pitch every game for us. Like you would if you had her. You pitch her as much as you could, like we did with Jordy. You can bet your ass Jordy probably would have pitched till she dropped this year if we made the Women's College World Series. She pitched all 3 games in Tennessee and just got stronger as they went. She lost 1-0. I think through like a 2-hitter or whatever, and struck out 10 or something. Yeah, it's really wearing her down. And the Texas Tech coach, I was going to say those, he came out and addressed it. He goes, well, I don't know, $1 million a year. After we signed her, said there were 750,000 hits that day on various social media. That's more, 10 times more than we ever got in a day. All sports before, probably, maybe football. And he goes, and then what? We go to all of a sudden we're in the College World Series final and we're within 1 game of being the champs and beating Texas. He goes, I think $1 million was a bargain. I think we got off cheap. Might have to up that. Anyway, yeah, being here for this, I get to hear some of that. And coaches admit it's not all sugars and candy. Both Signetti and Rule at separate times said, you know what, you've got to learn how. That's on us to make that locker room work. Because if you've got one guy in there who's making 600 grand and another guy in there who's making 75 grand, you might, just that difference alone, you might cause some heat. You've got to stomp on it. You got to make sure it doesn't work. Mike Locksley talked about that happening at Maryland. They went 4-8. He said part of it was losing the team, and said that was part of it. I wasn't aware of what was going on in the locker room. I'm not going to do that again. That's a mistake I will not make again. It took a lot of guts for him, especially in this day and age, to admit you're wrong. It's seen by a real weakness as some. He spit it out there. I screwed up, and I'm going to fix it. And good for him. So yeah, it doesn't make it easy, but you've still got to convince these guys and let them know it. I get it. You're making the money. He's making that money. But unless you're both into this to try and be part of something bigger than yourselves, then do you really want to be a part of it? And I think those guys get their message through. The Rule said, obviously he's not going to name names. He goes at a few positions. He goes, more than a few positions, we had guys starting who were making a lot less than their backups. Because he says there's one thing he said that would back it up. One thing he's not going to do when it comes time to put the team on the field, he's like, I don't care what your contract's for, brother. I'm putting the best player out there, and the numbers by that player's name aren't going to the numbers and dollar signs by that player's name aren't going to be part of that factor. So it seems like, at least in Nebraska, everybody gets it. And and he brought about how in the NFL draft, he goes, if you hit on 55% of your draft picks over time, you're probably going to have a very successful NFL team. He goes, and now it says we're paying high school kids now who are unproven, completely unproven, in a worse way that college draft picks are unproven. It's way tougher to figure out which high schooler is going to translate that game seamlessly from high school to college. He says, but we're paying these guys. So you might have a high school guy out there who's, hey, maybe he, got himself a $200,000 a year deal. And now the guy that's set to start ahead of him, who's 3 years older at safety, making 75 grand because it just clicked for him before his senior year. He goes, that guy's going to play, and maybe 200 grand a year guy's going to get mad. And I won't name a school where somebody who probably had a big deal went, but I'll just say, maybe 200 grand a guy a year figures, well, there's no respect there. And he goes, and if I can't get that message through to him, then he goes, that's as much on me as it is him. And we're now in an age where it's the drill sergeant just isn't in charge anymore. And that's been that way for the year in the NFL. It's like, Myles Garrett versus who's the coach of Cleveland again? If that comes head to head, who's gone? In this movie, here's Seth. Here's Seth, obviously not afraid to go head to head with his head coach, who he appears fully confident, and the coach not so. That if it does come to head, Seth Maxwell will be around next season, and BA will not. So there you go. All right. Everyone right now is probably rolling eyes at Fred for finding one of my trigger subjects. Thank you all for listening to the rant. Hopefully we didn't lose too many of you. And I'm going to be yelled at for Dr. Pepper now. Dr. Pepper, blah, I'm drinking Dr. Pepper version of Liquid Death cut with whiskey. It's awesome. It sounds awesome. More Northwestern, no purge masks at media day. That's right, they were naked in purge masks. It was even creepier. Northwestern is slipping, not my Wildcats. As I said, Minnie Hunt is here with me. Also, did Minnie pull? No, she did not pull a Morgana the kissing bandit on Dylan, asking for a friend. No, did she? Thrilled to see Dylan, but no, Minnie's a consummate professional. That's like, oh geez. Asking me if I just lose my mind if I got within 20 feet of, say, let's just say Aubrey Plaza. Let's just keep me more than 20 feet away from Aubrey. That could be dangerous. Did anyone ask Rule why his hair was almost all gray now? He needs Craig's touch of gray. Nope, no one asked him that. Sorry. Not looking to get thrown out just yet. Let's see. Okay, Fred confirms Twos was first a Raider. Fred, Minnie would be interviewing people, not the other way around. Minnie's not at Big Ten Media Days to be interviewed. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here we go. There's one Nico, and he greatly overestimated his value. Makes me laugh. His agent's handlers, whoever screwed him over, idiots. Yeah, and you see, people said this was the biggest problem in the end of mankind. Hey, think it over for a minute. This proves to me the system works. And I think it works for a lot of people who thought it was failing there. It didn't fit the people who, players that want money are evil, which basically started in the early 70s when this was the exact thing they thought about pro sports. You're lucky to be playing a child's game. You should play for free. And yeah, but you're the ones who will pay frickin' $115 for a mid-tier ticket. So yeah, no, you're the ones who make it that way, because if the team makes this much money and they're the attraction, I believe they should get most of that money. But anyway, no, that here you go, player. I want more money. Is it his right to ask for it? 100%. Now, because here's the thing: every time a player gets a big contract, they're the bad guy, and I've just never figured how that line of thinking. I know how it got started. It got started in the Sporting News with editorials which was one of their owners was the Chicago Cubs owner, and wanted it out there as a way to make players the bad guys in free agency. So no, guess what? The team has the right to say, no, we're not paying you that much. A lot of times they think about it and they go, it will cost us more to let this guy go than it will to pay more than people think he should and keep him. But they can also do, for all the whining. And I hate it when owners pay him and then bitch about it and say, well, they used to say, that's why your ticket prices are going up. So it's like, okay, I'm paying this guy what he wants for the sole purpose of improving our team. And if he's a big name, improving attendance, and then they turn around, up ticket prices, and then try to make the guy they just signed to do all that an enemy of the state in the fans' eyes. The stupidity is mind-boggling. So Tennessee says, no, we're not paying you. And they go, and for that matter, let's just call it a day. Go somewhere else. It's just, and they're not totally wrong there. It's like it's become enough of a deal where it's probably, even if you come back now, we've got our own crowd hating our quarterback. Not, like I said, not an ideal situation, right? And so they kicked him. He found another team that had an amount he was willing to accept, and life went on. I just didn't understand the roof is falling there, because I was like, there it is. The guy didn't walk away with all kinds of money. He asked for it. They said no. Go kick rocks. That seemed to me, for those who wonder if the system will work, the system came through. Let's see what else we got. Because we still got to do trivia. I'm having too much fun tonight. We're going to go over 2 hours. Maybe I'll write in the morning. Oh, Fred's got to take the dogs. Fred, bye. Thank you for firing up those comments a little. Diet Dr. Pepper's the GOAT. This one's another one. This is pretty good. I think it's just their Coke Zero, because they had both Diet Dr. Pepper and then this one, which just get the picture here, just says zero sugar. So like Dr. Pepper Zero. Tastes fine. Tastes like kind of like Coke Zero, just a little less sugary, but not gross. Diet soda is so much better than it was. I remember I tried it in like 70s, 80s. It used to be pot tooey. I did the Iron Sheik. Screw you. Get out of here, stupid soda can. And like Diet Mountain Dew is kind of my go-to along with Coke Zero. I'm not a huge pop guy, but I keep plenty of those two around. And Diet Mountain Dew, I drank it by accident once in like 9th grade and just never touched it again until probably 30 years later. And one of the guys I coached with drank it all the time. And I'm like, God, how can you stand that? And he's like, what? It practically tastes like the real thing. And I was like, shit, if it doesn't, it does. All righty. Yes, Tiger. TSD, RAP Ozzy Osbourne. Minnie and I were whispering about that in the middle of one of the coach interviews or something like that. Let's see. Oh God, ask Matt Rule if he would ever wear capri pants like PJ Fleck. PJ is about the only reason I'm going tomorrow. All my stuff I've got is just Nebraska. Not too many people are going to be interested in diving into the roots of the Maryland, experience. So I've got multiple storylines I can write on, but I do want to see if PJ can just make an ass of himself again. The king is still, hey coach, how are you? How are you feeling? And he came back with feeling elite today. Shut up. Signetti's pretty close to there. Now that guy can coach. Yeah, he came last year. He informed everybody, I don't lose. I know you're all expecting Indiana to get their butts kicked. I've only had like 2 losing seasons, and then the seasons after those, yeah, feeling elite. Here we go. That's word for word, feeling elite, and you just saw guys. I knew I was like, whoops, did I roll my eyes a little too hard there? Oh, jerk off. And I come down and everybody else's head is coming down for geez, PJ, you jackass. Well, Signetti's there, except Sig. I'm just wondering if PJ started busting up furniture when Sig went, 10-2 last year and made the playoff. Yeah, Sig showed up last year on fire. He's like, I never lost. The 2 teams I had the next year, one I won the conference or like won the conference championship game, and the other one like tied for the conference title or something like that. He comes out this year. Let me see. I wanted to get it right, and he just goes, "How y'all doing? I'm feeling great, and you know why? Where did I write that down? Oh wait, that's on my list. Yeah, 666. Yeah, he goes, yeah, 10-2, college football playoff, best season in Indiana history. 126 seasons. This one, number 1 out of 126. That's how he comes out. And I am like, you giant jackass. And I think I was smiling ear to ear, and it's got to be pretty funny because it's not like I have, touchy feely fuzzy memories of the fucking Indiana game, 56-7. Oh my God. But that was pretty damn funny. All right, let's get on to see if we can get this finished in about 10 minutes or so. All right, our categories, comedy. Let's get right to the comedy. This is a no-brainer. It's one of the funniest sports movies ever. It's just, oh God, disgusting at times. There's one scene where I can start telling you that it was so bad because here's Seth telling telling Phil how all the ways they debased the backup religious quarterback. And there's like he was mentioning certain aids with apparatuses with little grinders and spinners on them, and how drunk he got the quarterback. This is raunchy, good, clean, raunchy, disgusting fun. It's an Osborne for the comedy. That is our 5-star rating. What do we have next here? I had it on the right page and everything. Oh, here we go. Sports quality. I'm going to give that one the Devaney. We got a lot of ex-athletes out there. Nick Nolte looks good, doing slow white boy spinning around catches, but he definitely looks agile out there. I like it when you see a sports movie where even if it's an older guy, which he's not yet, he's still young here, but he looks like he grew up playing sports. He did not look like an alien in football pads. He was very comfortable in them. We're going to give that 4 stars. The music, we're going to go to the 2-star here. It's trying to be it's like da 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 da. It's trying to be kind of uplifting, and it's a little too cheesy. It's like they commissioned a high school band leader to write it. It's not great. They're trying, and some of the music in the background at parties and stuff is pretty decent. Adrenaline scenes. I'm gonna go Pelini there, because that last game and then the last game and the Matuzak speech after the game, you're feeling it. You're feeling the game. I mean, 2 brutal injuries. Here they come making like a 16-second comeback with Elliott making a great catch, and then it's good because when they miss that extra point, your heart drops with them. Oh, wow. ESPN alert just popped saying Maryland football player admits he lost his locker room. Yeah, Michael Oxley. I hope it doesn't bite you in the butt, because I like coaches. I'd like anybody who can go, you know what? I screwed up, but I know how to fix it, and I'm going to do the right thing. So anyway, back to Oxley. But yeah, the adrenaline, I liked it because you felt it at the end. You want, for all the bullshit they go through, you really wanted these guys to win, and then you wanted it even more after the game when Matuzak got your adrenaline going and almost making you cry when he's saying that stuff like, man, I need some fucking team spirit. It can't just be about money. We need to be a team. He wants that rah-rah, man. It's the drug people play for in team sports. Sometimes they want to go. It's like where some people are loners and just want to prove I can do it on my own. Others want to show they can be the part of something bigger than themselves. And that's when you know you've got a good locker room, when you've got the guys who pull together in those moments and aren't backbiting and shit. And that's an art form as much as the training is. Then what do we have? Rewatchability. For me, it's a 5. For me, I can watch it anytime. There's a couple slow areas, but not too bad. It's a borderline 4, because anytime you got the less slow parts, the better the rewatchability. But this, for 1979, it's a freaking banger. It's sweet. And then I always go, is there an Oscar reboot here? And you know what? One, and I don't think it's too hard to guess where I'm going there, because once again, Nick Nolte's amazing. Now, it's a little tough to stuff him in there and apologies to fans of the Pink Panther. It's the best actor slot, and I felt Nolte's so good that it's almost jarring when he's in the scene with, say, an ex-football player or even Mac Davis. Mac Davis does hold his own pretty well, but if he's like in there with one of the ex-football players, it's jarring because you don't really get to see this too often, where you get top-notch acting, uh, and going for top-notch acting, not in some horrible movie where they're going through the motions to get a paycheck. Here's Nolte like laying it all on the line, emotionally, comedy-wise, everything, and you never get to see that kind of talent. Just the difference between here's somebody who they're trying to make show any kind of emotion at all, and somebody who's it's like a little leaguer against somebody who just played in the All-Star game, and that's how good Nolte is compared to some of these guys, and so he's unbelievable. And then it's just the difference between those levels is unbelievable. Here is who was up that year. Dustin Hoffman won for Kramer versus Kramer. Kramer versus Kramer. I remember it being out, and I remember liking the movie. I do not remember just hitting every frickin' bell. It was like, I think it was Best Picture. I think Streep and Hoffman were Best Actor and Actress, and and then it was the money winner of the year. Hey, screw you, Titanic. This already got done. What a beatdown by Kramer versus Kramer. When you get the feeling people were wanting killer sharks and space battles and white guys who were really good in the heavyweight ranks of boxing. The other nominees: Jack Lemmon, China Syndrome; Al Pacino in Justice for All; Roy Scheider, All That Jazz. Hey, there's your Jaws, only he's Bob Fosse. He's choreographing Broadway plays. And then Peter Sellers for Being There. I read the book, saw the movie. Nick Nolte, you don't get the trophy, but you get Peter. If we get to redo this, you get Peter Sellers' spot. No offense, Peter Sellers, you're a fine actor, and think of it more of how good. I'm explaining this to Peter Sellers' name written in a notebook. For fuck's sake, I need some sleep. But yeah, I'm looking at that, and I'm apologizing to him for giving away his Oscar nomination. But I've done it. Can't talk me out of it. All right, trivia. There's some good stuff here, and I had to dig a little extra, but I'm glad I did. Let's see. Talked about that. Okay, here's one. Why is it called North Dallas 40? And I believe Peter Gent said he called it that because he couldn't believe the kind of segregation there was in Dallas. North Dallas was the high-end part of town. That's where their practice fields were, but the black players couldn't live there. Weren't allowed. And they lived in South Dallas, which I guess was a super long commute. And Gent said he just 5 years after civil rights are passed, he can't believe this kind of shit is still going on. And guess what? What stopped it was in 1969, Mel Renfro, Hall of Fame, All-Pro Hall of Fame safety for the Cowboys, or cornerback, defensive back. I'll cop out. Filed a fair housing suit and won 5 years after civil rights were passed. So that's what started getting North Dallas integrated. Good for you, Mel Renfro. They had a training camp. There's a lot of ex-NFL players, along with the actors Nolte and Maxwell, but they ran it like an actual training camp, like pro football training camp, to get them ready for the movie, and treated it like that. Actors, athletes, whoever was in there, you missed practice, you were fined. They fined their ass. I think that's hilarious. This was Mac Davis's first film. I thought he was, for a first film, very good. Now I get it's a little easier for musicians. They're used to performing. So, but it doesn't. We've seen cases where it doesn't always translate into, hey, because I perform at this, I'm good at. I can be a decent performer at anything. Mac Davis, better than decent. Filmed in L.A. Let's see. Oh, I talked about that. Okay. I think I said, I told everybody who the players, coaches, everybody representatives, but I don't need to redo that. Okay. Pete Gent asked to explain what it was like the pain recovery, that they kind of go through in this movie. And he said younger, he goes younger. And he's talking about at the end of the season, even he goes, for a while there, you can't sleep. There's just like the nose doesn't work if it's been busted up. The pain, you'll roll on something wrong, the pain will wake you up. And he said when he was younger, by the end of February, the pain's mostly gone. He's feeling spry again and can go. And he goes, and as you get older, it gets worse. It just becomes harder and harder. So I thought he played that part pretty well. He's been in the league 6 years now. He's getting, for a guy who's out there banging, a wide receiver, not as much as an interior lineman, but he's out there banging around. And they wanted those wide receivers to like block linebackers, which I think the only thing that was hit him hard enough. We know we'll probably have to take you out for a few plays, but hopefully he trips up on your corpse enough to keep him out of the play. Peter Gent really tried to figure out Tom Landry a lot and said he actually started reading psychology books so he was aware of what games Landry was trying to play with him. But he said he really respected Landry. He for as much as they kind of butted heads, he always respected what he was doing. He liked the innovative approaches he took to the game, and he didn't walk out of Dallas feeling wronged or anything. So he actually did a North Dallas 42, like a sequel, and in that he and BA reconnect and actually get along really well. I think that's when they're both retired. We did talk about the hunting scene. Real life Don Meredith totally fought Landry at every turn. They said that part of the movie, spot on. So like Landry, he wanted everything done by the book, know your tendencies, all this and that. Whereas, Meredith was a little bit of a gunslinger. Got to the point, said, here it was that he nearly won. I think he came within one game of winning championships, NFL or Super Bowl in 66 and 67. And then in 68, he got pulled from a playoff game for Craig Morton, who ended up being, I think, Landry's backup down the road. And I guess just quit. So that's it. Retires at 29 and truly thought that Landry was going to beg him to come back. Phone didn't ring once. So career's over shortly after. Like I think by 71, 72, he's on Monday Night Football. So, life moved on, and he'd always sing, "Turn out the lights, the party's over" at the end of games. But yeah, they didn't make that bit up at all. So one thing they talked about was in the notes I found was, here you are playing in an era where like knocking the quarterback silly, like knocking him unconscious or at least hard enough to where he's dizzy and can't get up. That was considered a good strategy, was lay the quarterback out. I can understand why rules came along that you just can't tee off on the head of a defenseless player, or go for his knees. I know with like the one with Brady was kind of silly, where the guy's on the ground like and wrapping his arms around his, his shins, and you're trying to hurt Brady's knee. But a lot of guys did go for that. And if you don't believe me, the Michigan game with Adrian Martinez, where we lost 32-29, had the big second half comeback. Aiden Hutchinson, you piece of shit, when he had that fumble near the end of the game, he's not the one knocking the ball loose when they're all holding him up and the refs, he's been stopped for several seconds and the refs won't blow the whistle. Go watch that again. Hutchinson goes for his knees. He comes into that big stand-up pile and takes a dive at Adrian Martinez's knees. Screw him forever. But anyway, there was a point. They talked about how they just take these horrible beatings, and the Cowboys were not happy with his retirement. They very much respected. He was a tough son of a bitch, Don Meredith, and he got up from a lot of cheap hits and headshots and kept going. The last guy I remember they really talked about this way was Jim McMahon. Also had and got it as a rookie. There's one point I think he had a punctured lung, and he's spitting up blood on the sideline, and went back in for a few plays, and the lineman saw the blood coming out of his mouth, and they're like, "Dude, that's not good." And they're like waving the trainer out, and the trainer saw, because that's little internal bleeding there through the lungs. So they whisked him out. But yeah, he was ready. And you have to feel that on some level, right? And so that's those are the guys I kind of remember. There's others I know, believe me, but I think for all, for as goofy as they make the Seth Maxwell character in there, they do show him taking some shots in that final game. And they said that was definitely a Don Meredith staple. Okay. Clint Murchison, the Cowboy owner at the time, the computers, totally true. He owned a computer company, and they first started it. He got with coaches and said, these can help. That's when they started. They started with something as simple as, are we predictable on 3rd and 10? And then just started feeding the computer and then making play calls accordingly to where they're not doing the predictable thing all the time. So, but yeah, computers in 62, and those computers were probably the size of my hotel room for spitting out a fraction of what your iPhone would do for you now. But not made up. They knew their tendencies. Now, some of Gent's teammates say things like he wasn't that good, and Gent fights back publicly and says that Landry had told him he was one of the best receivers that he ever coached. And they say, well, I think who was it? Leroy, big white mean ass linebacker for the Cowboys, and he couldn't stand Gent. It sounded like didn't like him writing the book. Said things like, the fact was this guy was popping every pill on the sideline if he got a headache. Tried to make it sound like he was a wimp for pain. And God, what was his last name? Oh, it'll come to me as soon as we flip off the air here. But anyway, he would fight back on that, and I tend to side with him. I think those guys calling him a puss, and especially if he had a mouth like that when he played, which I'm guessing he did, because the book's pretty funny, may not have liked their teammate airing their dirty laundry. So best revenge they got is, oh yeah, he was a puss. He took painkillers every time he got a nick on his knuckle or something. There's a little bit of that with his ex pals. Who'd they say? Landry. Oh, Landry and Meredith. I forgot to say this earlier. Part of the reason for the hatred was Landry, he's got his printouts and all this, and he would try to call plays. And not only would Meredith just call the plays he wanted, they said Meredith just, no, I got it. And they said Meredith at times, and here's how blatant it was. Landry'd send the guy in from the sideline with the play, and Meredith would wave him off, get out of here, and then call his own play. So, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have retired Meredith if quitting was going to be in that whole card you played. Maybe you should have just gone with the disrespect seemed to be working, and I get it was running both ways, but, you still would have been playing football. Or maybe you got even more money to be on Monday Night Football and not get the crap knocked out of you. And that's probably, I imagine, that's a tough lure to walk away from. If you've been playing in the NFL and let's say you got like 9 or 10 years in, because remember Gronkowski, I think, came back for a year after Brady asked him. And yeah, Gronkowski probably is like, nothing hurt last year, and this was great. So, yeah, I think once you get out of that game for a year and everything stops creaking quite as much, and if you got out of there without a permanent, limp or the replaced knee that definitely wasn't being done with the technology they have in 2025, I'm guessing a year or two away from the game, and the only thing you'll go back for is to coach. Just about done here. Gent said he was never, he never got dragged into the office. At least I didn't say anything about it if he did. Never got dragged into the office, got threatened with, violating all these smoking weed and NFL rules and whatnot. But he said he was convinced he was followed and investigated. He said he ran into the same guy, like sitting in a car across from his house more than once. And the NFL, I joke about them feeling bad about it. Last little piece of news, Tom Fears, former NFL player, and then a guy who ended up with whatever his job was after football, doing some sort of contract work with the NFL. He was the football action advisor. Movie came out. Tom Fears lost all his NFL contracts. Apparently, it had all been going fine. Guess who trained Pete Nick Nolte for the Phil Elliott role? Fred Biletnikoff. Yeah. like put him through some grueling training. Doesn't look it, but apparently he was in really good shape, but they didn't want the muscle builder body. They wanted the body that showed the beating of 6-7 years in the league. Fred Biletnikoff trained him. Fred Biletnikoff at age 29, cut by the Raiders. Done. So yeah, they sound like Tom Fears and one of the greatest receivers with a pile of stickum in each hand ever, Fred Biletnikoff. That's something else. Not shocking, because that is a movie that just blew apart the image and wanted, and for that matter, still wants to have. I find that all very interesting. A lot of those guys were already retired, and they could give a crap. I assume that's what it was. If they appeared in the movie, man, that is brutal. And what is brutal is we are done for this evening. Wow, we went. This is, I think, as long as we've gone, except for Friday Night Lights, and I was afraid we were going to be short. Maybe my yet another rant on go ahead and pay the players added it an unneeded 20 minutes, but I still stand by it. By the way, screw you, John Johnston. No, there's nothing wrong with NIL revenue sharing and the transfer portal. Nothing that won't fix itself over time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good to see a number of you show up again. We're making it through the summer okay. Maybe going to Vegas is one of the dumber things you can do in a hot summer. But if there's one thing they believe in here, it's bring on a ton of electricity, and I'd say between the dams and all the solar panels, it's probably not costing what it used to. Goodbye from Vegas. I'll be around tomorrow, and then flying back to the Big O on Thursday. Don't bother trying to rob my house. I don't have shit. There's nothing there. Love you guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. What's getting to be a habit, I will post tomorrow what next week's movie will be, or maybe I'll do it again. I'll do it after I get off the phone tonight, and just check Corn Nation's X/Twitter, whatever the hell it is. I'll probably post a few things tomorrow again about good old Big Ten football media days. Nothing really is going to be accomplished except some more good feelings, but we found out how the injuries were. I'll scribble about that and just be typing away and enjoying tomorrow, probably at some bar that has let's put it this way, a blackjack table that has a waitress. I feel like playing a little blackjack tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. We will see you soon. Go Big Red, and can't say thanks to y'all enough. We'll see you later.